All right, hey everyone, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Ashi. Some of you know me, many of you don't, but I'm going to be along with Gabe. I'm going to be teaching senior phase with you. So I'm really excited to work with all of you. This is actually the first time I've taught a senior phase down here. So I'm kind of excited to see what we can do with the energy of like 40 people all working on crazy cool projects. So we need the projector to be on, don't we? So there are a few, what's that? Oh yeah, absolutely. So there are a few things you need to be aware of for the senior phase to make your senior phase the best possible. And I'm just stalling right now while the projector warms up. So does anyone have a fun story about your weekend? And we're waiting for it. Really? Do you know what's going on there? I can hit input again. Sorry.
It looks like the HDMI is plugged into the projector.
Oh.
Of all the places for it not to be plugged in.
Why there though?
But this one is plugged in. There's two HDMI cables. Why are there two HDMI cables?
Try plugging in the other one, and I'll try switching things.
Why are the two HDMI cables?
The first thing you should know about senior phase is that everything is going to go wrong and it's okay.
Very true.
Oh, does that mean it found something? No, it just meant it gave
It's
up.
saying it had no signal.
I'll switch it
Which is the output here? Because that can go right into my computer.
This is the. This is going up to the ceiling, and this is the blue one.
This is going up to the ceiling?
Yeah, that's the one that's connected to the projector right now.
I guess I'll look at it.
So it's plugged directly.
Yeah.
That's the
The
one.
blue one is the one.
I mean, I tried both, but try.
I don't know what this other HDMI is.
Oh.
Hey! Senior phase survival, step one.
Yes. But I want to. Okay, let's try that again. Welcome to senior phase. There are many pieces of advice that we're about to go over to maximize your senior phase. But there is only one rule, and that rule is avoid bears. That is, avoid bears. So there's a few species of bears in particular that we'd like you to avoid. You might be thinking, I have not seen them roaming the halls down here in New York City's financial district. We're not in the Castro, but nevertheless, we do have bears and you will see them. You will be able to identify them, and hopefully after this presentation, you will feel empowered to call them out in yourself and your teammates. The first bear is, this project is my life bear. So there are 3 projects in senior phase, Grace Shopper, Stackathon, and Capstone, and none of them are going to make or break your future career, I promise. Your Capstone project is probably not going to become a multi-billion-dollar startup. Your Stackathon is probably not going to become a research paper, and Grace Shopper is probably never going to sell anything. I'm saying these things not to say that they won't be incredibly valuable experiences, but just to contain them within the context of learning. We're doing all of these things to learn, rather than for the project itself. Obviously, you should do the best you can on them and invest in them heavily, but try and maintain perspective, which can be pretty hard when you've been up for 12 hours in some mad coding haze trying to get one feature that you thought would take 5 minutes to work. Ask me how I know. So there's a lot of senior phase content other than the project, which is also going to help you a great deal, particularly in your forthcoming job hunt, which are words that I'm going to try and use as little as possible. There will be content from career services, so interview and job prep. Some of that will come from us in the form of technical interview training. There are tech talks, there's Reacto, there will be various assorted lectures, including CTO lectures, which are usually more fun than lectures you've had previously. There are miscellaneous fun activities, and then finally there are the projects. Important, but not everything. You don't have to cling to your project as though it is really a sad facsimile of the only home you ever had that is now molten. So take everything seriously, but also remember that you have a lot of things to do during senior phase, and a major skill that developers need to hone is time management. Because there's always more things to do in the code, and the question is how you prioritize your work, both on the code and off the code. Your health is and should be your #1 priority, so don't, or try not to enter into one of those 24 to 48 hour coding hazes that I previously mentioned. And finally, remember that all of the content you're going to get here is valuable. There's a tendency, especially at the end of Capstone, to sort of see CTO lectures and be like, I don't know if I want to go to that one, versus like hacking more on this thing. Probably going to the lecture is a more valuable use of your time. For one thing, it's like 1 hour, it's like very contained. For another, you probably will benefit from that time away from your code, even if it doesn't feel like it. Even if it feels like your brain is firing on all cylinders and you're in it now, and if you just change one more line of code, it's going to work. It's not. It's just not. I promise you. All right. Questions about bear #1? Okay. So to avoid this bear, be prompt, meaning don't stay up all night and then like slink in at 11. Monitor your calendar so you know when things are coming up and you can kind of plan your day. Try and stay in a big picture perspective. So remember that these projects, while important, and while they are in a sense your life right now, they're not actually your life. Manage your stress and time. So think to yourself what signs tell you that you're getting stressed, even if you don't feel like it, and what techniques you have for coping with that stress, and then go do them. And finally, reach out to us. Reach out to me. I'm going to have office hours. I'm going to try and have them every day if we can find a spot to just sit with the door open. And your fellows are always resources. Gabe is a resource. We're here to help you. All right, bear number 2. I am a lone bear, and I need no other bear's bear. So this bear is not aware of this fact, which is that programs must be written for people to read and only incidentally for machines to execute. Or most of the work of software engineering is actually dealing with people. We are more translators than we are wizards. Being able to write some crazy construction of code is of limited value if you can't ensure that that code is actually useful to people, which means finding out how to interact with them, how to work with them, how to find out their needs. And these are skills that we don't emphasize as much in this program, particularly during junior phase, but which we are going to start to emphasize in senior phase, particularly for capstone. Software engineering is also very much about working together, right? There's a hard limit to what any one person can do, even if that person is like Dan Abramov or like one of the greats. They all have teams now for a good reason. So what you should be thinking about in senior phase is how to work on a sustained project. Your code is going to be read a lot, revisited a lot, and it's going to have to be maintained. It's only going to be written once, and there's an adage that if you write something in the most clever way possible, you are not, by definition, clever enough to debug it, since debugging something requires you to like twice as much mental effort as writing the code in the first place. So don't do it. Your code should be written with care and should emphasize clarity. You should use conventions that your team has decided on. You should listen to your linter, which means that you should set up a linter and have it configured with the appropriate rules for your project. We'll show you how to do that later this afternoon for Grace Shopper. And I actually I'm not completely on board with measure twice, cut once, but have your code reviewed. Don't go pushing things to master like that crazy cowboy from one of the React slides. Do have your teammates, your fellows, review code, particularly if you're not 100% sure of it. And in fact, even then, it's always helpful to have 2 eyes on it. Communication within your team is very important, and you should try and systemize it when possible. So that means simply coming up with times when you'll all be on Slack, deciding whether you would rather Slack or email people and doing that, so making sure that there's one way to contact someone, deciding when you're going to be working and when you're explicitly not going to be working. You should still try and pair. I know that like in senior phase we take the breaks off and we're basically like you can pair when you want and not pair when you don't want to. And actually, I usually find that people, like about half the people are still like really excited about pairing and half aren't. Even if you find yourself like kind of excited to be working alone, definitely do that, but also still pair at least occasionally with your teammates. It helps spread knowledge within a team so you don't end up being the person who knows about the cart and nobody else can touch the cart because only you know about the cart. There's a tweet that I read recently, stare not into the abyss, lest you be recognized as an abyss domain expert and nobody will let you stop staring at the thing. Hold yourself accountable. So if you push something and it breaks everything, say, oh, I pushed this thing and it broke everything. I promise that it won't be the first time that you break something, and it's not a major problem in software engineering because we have many layers of checks. There's actually, at Google, there's a badge it's a whale carrying the Gmail logo, and it means that I broke Gmail for a lot of people. I had that badge. It was a little scary. Be open to feedback from your teammates about how you're working. And just generally try and remember that you are learning to be a team member as much as anything. If you want to feed this bear, you might decide your team are a bunch of worthless hacks and you can do it alone. You might ignore the practices and conventions that you and your team have decided upon, which means you might just go off into a code haze for 24 hours and come back with some artifact that is perhaps wonderful, but also not particularly collaboratively conceived. A flip side of number 2 is obsessing over best practices, particularly in other people's code. You should try and follow the conventions. There are also times when the conventions of style or substance are impediments, and you should be able to recognize those times as well. So in conclusion, try and appreciate and use your team members. Strike a balance between productivity and perfection, and try and use this as an opportunity to learn from everyone around you and emulate their good qualities. And finally, again, reach out to us if you're feeling like you're drowning, or if you feel like there are communication issues on your team that we are not noticing. We are not the best position to notice it, whereas you are. So if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling not heard, or if you're feeling isolated, you should escalate those to us as soon as possible. Okay, we have one more species of bear. This is kind of my favorite bear because it looks like a rug. It's I am done learning bear. Bear rug. So good programmers never stop learning. I am about to learn a whole bunch of things that are very scary because I told people I would do a talk on them. It's exciting and all, and they chose my talk, which means now I have to learn all about deep learning, which is kind of meta, but also scary. It means that I'm about to embark on this sort of math-filled journey of things I barely understand, and that's good. That's why we're in this field. That's one of the things that keeps it continuously exciting and engaging, for me at least. So what you've learned in junior phase is just really the tip of the iceberg. We're going to build upon that and extend it in senior phase, but even so, at the end of this, you're not expected to be a JavaScript superhero. I mean, you will have climbed this great mountain, and from that vantage point, you will be able to see all of the much taller mountains, some of which go into space, and up there is like Elon Musk throwing rockets somewhere, and someday you will climb to those heights as well, or you will not. You don't have to be like Elon. Elon is his own demon. So don't get frustrated with yourself if things are still hard, especially if things that you think you maybe should know are still hard. You're still integrating everything you've learned over the past 6 weeks. Try not to get frustrated with the process. If, for example, it's the end of Tuesday and you're like, oh, we've had so many interruptions to coding that I don't feel like I've gotten enough work done on this feature, it's okay. We understand that that's part of the process, and you should be kind to yourselves as well about those raw facts. You are not yet, in fact, I don't think anyone should be particularly dogmatic about technologies and approaches. React is the best. Yes, we all love React. Everyone has decided that all JavaScript should be written with React these days. But that doesn't mean that there won't be some better framework that comes out, I don't know, at the rate that JavaScript frameworks come out, next week or this afternoon, that'll just completely blow it out of the water. It's not likely to be very soon, but it's definitely going to happen. In 5 years, we probably won't all be using React. And in 10 years, there's a decent chance we won't all be using JavaScript. So you shouldn't know everything. It's impossible to know everything. And insofar as you have that desire in yourself, try and let it go. I mean, have the desire to learn everything, but the expectation that you actually learn everything, it's never going to be fulfilled. So to avoid despair, work hard on your tech talk. This is an opportunity, tech talk or your portfolio enrichment piece. So these are opportunities, whether you do a talk or you do a blog post, to do research into something that's like not touched on or not touched on much in the curriculum, and sort of do a deep dive into some new area of computer science. So use that as an opportunity to learn. Catalog and share your learning moments, even if it's just slacking out funny GIFs with captions on Slack. Start thinking about theoretical problems, like what is the shape of code that we should create to approach a certain like class of problems, rather than just like, how do I fix this bug in my code right now? Accept that you're always going to be learning, and push yourself to keep doing so. So in conclusion, to optimize your senior phase, to make sure you have the best time possible, keep yourselves healthy. Please don't come down with the death strap halfway through. Show up on time, so be here for Reacto. I will be here for Reacto. That will be as hard for me as for anyone, I promise. Focus on team building. Focus on collaborative skills, on learning to work together. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with your teammates. Learn and teach all of the wonderful things that you're going to learn and teach. And have fun. Any questions? All right, I'm really looking forward to working with all of you. Okay, thanks. So now we have, we have 10 minutes before this starts, so take a break till 10:30, and then we're going to have a talk on how to work together. You may want to sit with your Grace Shopper teams.
Bruce. Bruce.
You're going all the way over there.
Yeah.
You come this way.
Okay.